What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Sav Show. My name is Savilian. I'm the host of this show, and today I'm bringing you a conversation with mental health and performance coach Nadia Sophia. So Nadia is someone that I've connected with recently through my conversations and basically kind of viewing the results that she was getting for some of my friends, Sam and Sam, back in Melbourne at Absolute MMA. I was really encouraged to at least go check her out. And once I did that, I saw a lot of really great content. I resonate with her message a hell of a lot. A lot of the things that she talks about in regard to kind of like, you know, trauma, our inner child, becoming our own best friend, taking control of our lives, stuff like that. It's all stuff that I really strongly believe in, and I resonate with her message on a very deep level. So I really wanted to have a conversation with her, get her on the podcast. She was kind enough to agree. So we went ahead and did that. We got to talk about a lot of things, her overcoming her own, troubles from her past, slaying her own demons. We talk about her current coaching model, how she likes to look at things, how you can become a better friend to yourself. She lists a couple of tactics that we can dig into there. Then she also talks about her relationship with the fighters, Sam and how she's helping them with their fight training and their mentality. We also go on to talk about some of her most recent content, a course called Becoming Savage, which I cannot recommend highly enough. It is insanely good content, and it's for free. I'll put a link to it below. And then we talk about her 10-year vision and where she wants to take the business eventually. So yeah, really great conversation. I love Nadia's energy. I love her character, her personality, and she has this almost tone of like, I love you, but I'm not going to take your shit kind of thing. And it's very, it's very direct and it's authentic, and I fuck with it a lot. And she swears, and I love that. So yeah. Anyway, here's my conversation with mental health and performance coach Nadia Sophia. Hope you enjoy it. If you really like this podcast and this conversation, drop a comment below. Subscribe to my channel. It would mean a lot. And if you're on YouTube, if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave a review. It all helps an insane amount. So yeah, here's my conversation with Nadia Sophia, mental health and performance coach. I hope you enjoy it. Let's go. I reckon about 35 minutes roughly we'll need.
Sweet. Too easy. You're definitely going to have to slim down your questions then, because I can't even tell you half my life story in that amount of time. That's it.
No, I'm joking. So you've explained or kind of referred to yourself as a Swiss Army knife of coaches. Can you enlighten me on what you mean by that?
Yeah. So I think like in the mental health and well-being space, or even the performance space, generally you have a lot of specialists. Like that's what you're told to do. You're told to niche essentially by every business coach and by every coach quite early on. And I guess I've sort of gone the other way a little bit, as opposed to being very specialized in any one thing. Over the last 10 years, I have managed to build a resume that's quite diverse, and have sort of found that is like my superpower in the space. I think there is a space for specialists and they're really important. But to be honest, what I think is often missing for people in really like performing at a high level or resolving mental health difficulties is you're a multifaceted human being. You're not a specialized problem. You are a professional, you are personal, you are someone who's dating, it's your health, it's your finances, it's your breathing, it's all of those pieces together. But You go and you speak to your, the psychologist for this, and your breathwork facilitator for that, and your financial person for this, and your business coach for that, and none of them are talking to each other. And then you're wondering why you're constantly at this stagnation where you're not really getting anywhere. And then to amplify that, we live in a society that unfortunately is not really encouraged to critically think and learn to discern information. So even that process of learning how to discern information, integrate it, decide what to take and what to leave, that's also something most people are developing throughout this process. And when they're working with all these specialists, what tends to happen is they do one thing with that person to a point, and then they stop working with them and they start working with someone else, and they start doing everything that person says. And there's just this lack of integration. So for myself, I have worked since I was, 16. I did a psychology degree. I studied a coaching course. I worked in human resources for 5-6 years in a large scale infrastructure business. I've studied functional breath work. I've studied under people that have taught me the trauma, rebirthing style breath work. I've worked with functional health specialists and people that specialize in like nutrition and gut health so that I understand that physical component. I also have, I'm not a teacher, but I do transcendental meditation and have like learned that from a meditation teacher. So that, and then I also have life experience, right? So you have the psychs that learnt from a course, and then sometimes you have the life coaches that have done a 2-day NLP course plus their trauma, and they're trying to help people. And I sort of have a happy marriage of all of those pieces. And that's where that idea of the Swiss Army knife came from. It's, you can put me in your back pocket and I have enough range of personal and professional experience that I can kind of help you open any jar or pick any lock. And then if there comes a point where you need a more specialized tool, also through all my learning and experience, I have a really good network of professionals that I like on refer to as well. So that's where that comes from.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, that's a great explanation of it. And I love the metaphor at the end there of opening the door. Or is this obviously not a legal activity? Yeah, we're just keeping it strictly legal. No,
yes, of course, sure.
No, I think that's it's a beautiful explanation, and it just makes sense because, like if I'm struggling with something, let's just say I'm struggling with anxiety. If I go to someone to speak about that specifically, and then I sort out the anxiety, but then there's some financial issues that haven't been resolved. If I'm talking to one person who has like a holistic view of everything, they can go, well, actually that spending habit that you have here is actually linked to this thing over here. Maybe, not saying it 100% is, but maybe.
Correct.
So yeah, that's a great overview. Just, well, with that said though, because I would imagine, and this is just my kind of outside view, as you were saying that, I'm like, well, more risk though, right? Like if someone's coming to you with like, everything, does that kind of increase the chance that you might not be able to solve that specific problem? Or I guess does it make it easier when you can on refer?
No, I think again that even the place your mind goes there is indicative of the lack of understanding we have of how mental health or well-being or performance exist. Just like in the body, right? Like the fascia in your body, it's all connected. It's one big piece. So when you have pain up here, a lot of the time it's coming from your ankle. And if you go to see someone for your shoulder, it's not going to fix the problem. Your mind works no differently. And I actually think there is more risk starting your journey with a specialist because there's just things they're going to have. There's explanations they're not even going to consider. And you could go down this, for example, you go to a traditional psychologist and they have no idea about gut health because a lot of them don't. And you spend 10 years in therapy talking in fucking circles, excuse my French, about your problem. But it turns out you have leaky gut, which is turned into leaky brain. And your anxiety is completely caused by your physical problem and no talking is going to get you out of that, Whereas with me, even if I don't have the answer, I am far more equipped than a lot of people to be able to tell where the problem is coming from. Is it physical? Is it mental? Is it spiritual? Is it organizational? Is it relational? And then be able to point you in the right direction or tell. And if I end up not having any of the answers, well, we've wiped out about 10 specialties and we know then we need to send you to someone, So I kind of actually think it's the opposite. I think there is a place in people's journey where I am the most relevant thing, and there are beginning to be more and more, health coaches that have a little bit of a psych background and stuff like that as well. And there are more and more professionals that are turning into the mental health space and stuff. So there is beginning to be more people with a similar skill set to me, but I guess it's just the way that mine has turned out. It's been a bit of as I've progressed and I've gained needed these things, I've brought them on board and they've become mine. So I actually think it's the less risky way to do it this way. And then to go into a specialist throughout the journey rather than start there.
Yeah, at a specific point, you might decide, all right, we need to hone in on this just a little bit more. Let's maybe push you on. But it takes probably your bird's eye view to identify that thing in the first place. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of the time I sort of, I might still live in the background. So for example, it might be, like currently I had a client that I worked with him for about a year, and then he's now working predominantly with an acupuncturist that I on refer to who specializes in trauma. So while he's seeing this guy every week, he's now only seeing me monthly. But I'm sort of still facilitating the journey, because when he gets to the end of the acupuncturist thing, we'll come back in and decide what his next steps are. So sometimes people just like having that. It's almost, I guess, can become more of a mentoring role over time, where it's like I'm just a second set of eyes and decision making about what the next part of the path is. But yes, there is also situations where people might leave and move on to the next thing. But predominantly I found people will keep me in their back pocket as the guide to navigate the system a bit,
Yep. I like that. So you touch on kind of your journey and your unique set of experiences that have built your current coaching model. In that, I guess, is your lived experience and your journey, from your early 20s and all the demons you've slayed along the way to, where you are right now. Do you want to kind of touch on that journey a little bit for me and everyone listening, just to give them a bit of insight on how you've got to where you are now?
Yeah, you'd think by now I'd have like a succinct way to tell this story, and I must admit I find it every time I think I just sort of pick another part of it to focus on, but I guess to go, I'll just start from the beginning and we'll see, if you want to cut me off at any point, cut me off. But I guess my mum has quite a severe mental illness, so her actual diagnosis has changed over the years, but schizophrenic, paranoid schizophrenic, or multiple personality disorder, sort of bipolar diagnoses have kind of swapped around throughout the years. My dad is a very strict Muslim, was born in Afghanistan and came over here. So within the couple of weeks of being born, I was separated from my mum and she was back in hospital. And then I was my dad has a big family and, they did their best to pitch in where they could, but it sort of meant I got passed around a lot. I sort of lived with every uncle and aunt. My dad has 8 brothers and sisters and my mum has 2.
Oh, wow.
And I would say I've lived with almost everyone at some point in my life for short or long periods at a time. So I would almost there's an auntie that I actually call mum, and for a long time I thought she was my mum, and then found out she wasn't my mum. And so you can sort of imagine there's parts of that sound beautiful, and there are, because I had this big support network, but there was also a lot of abandonment and uncertainty and sort of lack of safety and stuff. My mum accused my dad of being violent, and my dad definitely has a temper. We were in women's homes at certain points. And then my dad remarried when I was about 5, and my stepmother, I was about to say stepmonster because that is an accurate description for the relationship I had with my stepmother. In her defense, she was very, very young when she came here from a Middle Eastern country to Australia, no family, no support, but she was really horrible to me, really horrible, I experienced quite a lot of emotional abuse, culminating. This is a story that always comes to mind to try to sort of give the picture of what it was like. I would have been 7 or 8 and I had gastro and I vomited on the floor, and I came out and you're really sick, and I was like, oh, I vomited, and she was like, you know where the towels are.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So not nurturing, not caring.
And then as I got older, it progressed. She called me a slut. She called me, and by the time I ran away from home when I was 16. And when I left at that point, I was suicidal. The situation at home had gotten so bad. I was afraid to leave my room when my dad wasn't home. She was horrible. She made me feel horrible. And she'd been doing that since I was about 6. And my family, I don't know, I guess it's old school and religion and traditions and culture and stuff, but they sort of took the tact of oh, for your dad, like, my father had an older son that he no longer had a relationship with, and they would use that. There was a lot of like, oh, your dad's already lost one child. He had children with my stepmother. He's like, if you get in between their relationship, he's going to lose more kids. Like, you can't. So I'm a kid, and there's all that pressure and responsibility and guilt that's being put on you. And then I ran away from home when I was 16. And then I guess I had very human problems. Like I got bullied. I had a scoliosis. So I had like a big spinal surgery and had to learn to walk again when I was in high school. And then, I got into partying and drugs and all sorts of fun stuff as I got older. And then again, just those natural things of what am I doing with my life? Trying to pass uni. Had more sort of relationship breakdowns. I had a few other adults that stepped in to support me in my early, between 16 and 18 and stuff when I was at home. I had a couple of uncles and aunties that helped me out. And then they sort of pulled the wool out from under me at quite a young age and sort of stuff again, and ended up in a situation.
As in, like they didn't want to be present anymore?
So I think I was about 18 and an uncle and auntie took me in for a couple of years, and this is actually where like I ended up in quite a bit of like financial trouble that sort of started at this point. Essentially what happened is they had said that I could live with them until I finished uni. And I said, are you sure? They said, yes, no worries. So I went and planned this Europe trip and spent all my savings and went to Europe, and then got back and they kicked me out. And upon kicking me out, I was at uni, had to quit my job, get a full-time job, tried to stay at uni and had no money. So I ended up my wisdom teeth happened and I had to rent a house and get furniture, and I got a credit card, and I ended up with debt that I think at its peak reached like $21,000. And then, like I said, partying, drugs, boys, it sort of gives you like that's not an in-depth part of any of it, but it gives you a bit of an idea of, and throughout that, I guess for me that culminated in real difficulty with relationships. Like I've really struggled to hold friends, a lot of anxiety around relationships. I had bulimia for a long time. Like I said, the partying and stuff became a real problem for me. My self-esteem was really bad, massive people pleaser, no boundaries, no money, nothing, and then slowly throughout the journey had to rebuild my relationship with myself, have rebuilt my relationship with all my family. Like I didn't speak to my dad for a couple of years. I didn't speak to my mum for 9 years, didn't really speak to my mum or my dad's family. And, at 30, I have reached a point where I speak to all of my family. I still don't have a great relationship with my mum. It's quite strained, but I speak to all my family. I'm, no longer have the eating disorder. I don't suffer from anxiety. I have savings in the bank, not debt. I own my own business. Honestly, it's like almost unfathomable to me looking back on certain memories and moments. I'm like, if I didn't know better, I'd almost think that wasn't me. Like it feels so far away now. And that's been a pretty, I guess, something that keeps me really motivated to do this, because like I see people and I see where they're at, and I'm like, if I could get here, like so can you. I really fucking believe that.
You got to pinch yourself sometimes.
Yeah.
That's a pretty surreal story. And what moment, I guess it's hard to, because there's so many things that you probably would have had to unravel and unpack over such a long period of time. But was there a particular moment where it kind of like the table switched? Because I would imagine there would have been a lot of negative self-talk along that journey, right? Convincing yourself that you weren't good enough, you weren't lovable, you weren't this, you weren't that. Do you think there was a moment that you can recall where you went like, I'm not going to hate myself anymore?
It's a good question. Let me think if I can. Look, you're right in saying there would be several little moments, but I guess like, and I think who did I hear talking about this? Was it Chris Williamson or Jay Shetty? Someone sort of said the same thing where over time, what you're going to experience this journey, and what I experience is you feel level 10 fucked all the time. And then you feel level 9 fucked most of the time, and you might have a day off. Yeah. And then you feel level 12 fucked, and then you feel level 7 fucked. And then you have 5 good days, and, and there's a little bit of a journey of that. But what I would say is really like a significant turning point where it started to become more good than bad. It's when I actually did something with myself. So like all the talk and all the shifting of mindset and all the you're good enough and all that stuff was great, and it got me moving. But ultimately, I didn't really hit a point where I felt good enough more than I don't until I actually became good enough. And that's probably a little bit of an unpopular thing to say in the personal development space. Like, I don't think we should ever hate ourselves. I think it's such a shame that that's a place that I lived in, but it is a reality that a lot of people live in. But I think it's Jordan Peterson says it as well. It's like, there is a moment of like, maybe sometimes you do deserve to feel like you should be more, and you should be trying harder, and you should be giving more. And maybe in that, eventually there's this moment where you hit and you look at your life and you go, oh, I can be proud of myself now, And for me, that was certainly a tipping point. Like when I wasn't partying as much and I'd started to create my own business, and I had awareness, and I'd done the work, and I'd gone to therapy, and I'd, pulled myself out of certain situations and was making certain moves. That was certainly when, because I had something to argue with the voices with that was a little bit more sturdy, not just me saying like, you are good enough. Yeah, it was like, well, you've proven it, like, look what you pulled yourself out of, look what you created, look how hard you work. That evidence-based approach for me probably was the biggest turning point where things became more good than bad. But there was certainly, obviously, moments before that even let me get to that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think evidence-based approach is a really good way to look at it. And Alex Hormozy has this thing where he says, self-confidence or self-belief isn't just shouting affirmations into the mirror. It's about stacking up proof that you show up as the person that you say that you are. And and I think that's kind of what you're saying. Like when you like telling yourself that you're good enough and that you're worthy and all that stuff is like, it's nice to start with that foundation, but until you actually, put pen to paper, until you actually get out on the track, until the rubber meets the road, it's a bit hard to marry those two things up together. And actually, there was a video that that I saw of yours where you were talking about this concept, where you go from, you basically talked about having to have a funeral for your old self, and I really like that idea. And it's actually funny that I saw, I saw it as I was doing research today. But basically, I was having that exact conversation, or not that exact conversation, but a kernel of that conversation with my little sister earlier today, about how certain things that she's doing are protecting her from actually, the way that our brain works is like it's trying to protect us from things. So like, the bed in the morning, a dark room, a Netflix binge, like these things give us comfort that actually protect us, right? And make us feel safe. Like that's our brain's job. And it's our job to try to trick our brain to kind of like go, well, look, I understand what you're trying to do, but maybe we can like, tweak it a little bit, right? So yeah, I love how you kind of referred to the fact that sometimes you can't actually move past that point properly is because we're trying to protect ourselves. And you talk about the funeral for your old self. Do you want to talk a little bit about that idea and what you mean by that? Because I love that.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess the premise of it was, I think I was actually speaking to a client who's like, he said, it's like, I actually can't, it's like I won't let myself relax. Every time I go to relax, I keep the voices that tell me I'm not doing a good job, that I'm not good enough, they all come up and scream again. And we sort of spoke about the fact that, like I said, right, those voices maybe got us to do the work. Sometimes sometimes those negative, and sometimes not. There are people, those negative voices is what's stopping them. But for a lot of people, a certain relationship with that part of you that wants you to do better is what moved you along and what helped you to get to certain parts in your process. But you hit this stage where, you know, you've stacked the evidence. I think David Goggins calls it a cookie jar. You've created your cookie jar, and there's actually this really good resume of things that you've done, you know, that show you have changed, that you are this new person, that you aren't, you know, the old things that used to hold you back. But in order to protect you, your mind is remembering all of those things, right? If I eat chocolate every day and then the next day I forget that that's what made me overweight in the first place, cool, I'm going to become overweight again. So it's a very intelligent thing that your mind and your subconscious goes, the things that got us here, we have to keep doing them. But what you're going to learn throughout these stages of your healing journey is you are going to die and be reborn a million times on the journey until you're standing to the place where I am, where I've been born and dead so many times I can't remember my first life, right? They talk about past lives. Turns out they're all happening fucking right here, you know?
Right now.
Right now, yeah. And what I have found is the mind needs physical things to go along with mental things. When something just happens in our mind, like, you know, when you just change internally and there's no external representation of that, it's kind of hard to accept, you know? It's like you go through a breakup. If all their shit's still in your house and their photos are still on your phone and their sweaters still, you know, that you can still smell them on the sheets, of course you're going to think they're coming home, right? What do? You return their things. You take the photos of them off your phone. You change your sheets. You get a haircut. You buy new clothes, right? Why? Because that physical change allows you to mentally accept, okay, my life is different now. I look different. My house looks different. The situation's different. So it's using this same concept throughout your healing journey, realizing when you've had a shift, and when you've had that shift, bringing in a physical ceremony to help you accept and sit into that shift so that those aspects of your mind might feel safe enough to trust you, you know, and that might look like the example I gave, which was, you know, writing a eulogy, like writing a letter to the old you and burning it. Breath work is a really powerful way to do that. Like people do like big rebirthing breath work sessions. You know, a lot of people use plant medicine and stuff like that. Could even be like going for a run. You know, one of the most profound moments for me in my journey was when I did a hike in Colombia, and honestly, in the first day, I was like, I'm going to die. Like 100%. I've never been so confident that I was going to die. But I didn't die. And well in this thank you. It's probably being a bit dramatic now looking back. But honestly, physically, it felt like I was going to die. And in that physical experience of not dying, that shifted so many things for mentally. That idea of take things one step at a time. I learned it on that hike, because if I had thought about more than one step ahead, I wasn't doing it anymore. I would have sat down and asked for the donkey to take me back down the bottom of the mountain. But the physical, I literally had to, there was donkeys. That's literally what they used to get you back down if you hurt yourself. Yeah. You had to ride the donkey if you hurt yourself. That was the only way down. There was no cars that could get up there, right?
You couldn't just cartwheel down?
Unfortunately, the Mayan steps weren't designed for that. So that again, that it could be maybe you do a triathlon or a hike or whatever, but physically putting yourself through something and having that mental intention of like, this is me, physically letting go of that old version of me and allowing this like rebirthing of the new version of me to exist. I found that to be incredibly powerful for myself and for my clients.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Yeah, no, it's a great concept. It's a great idea. I love the way you articulate it as well. And I think it's kind of I mean, look, when I heard it really clicked something in my brain, because I feel like that's a missing piece that's a piece that I've been missing, and I feel like it might be a piece that a lot of people are missing. Like, you know, you start to make these positive changes, but to actually draw a line in the sand and go, all right, now, like, yes, there's a lot of positive stuff in my life now, but this is where I draw the line in the sand, and I'm letting that thing go completely. Yeah, having some physical representation of that is really cool. So one of the things that I'm like, you know, hugely into, and the concept that I've like really meditated on and spent a lot of the last 12 months around, is the concept of becoming your own best friend. And you know, it seems to be something that you're pretty into as well. Are there particular like tactics or tips outside of obviously the obvious ones of like getting coaching and mentorship programs and like support groups and stuff like that? But are there like specific things on a day-to-day basis where we can start to become, better friends to ourselves?
What makes a good friendship with someone else?
Honesty.
Yeah, that was literally the first one I had in my head, so I love that you went there. Let's go to that
Honesty.
one, right?
Yeah,
honesty.
Let's go there.
If you have a deeply honest relationship with another person, there is an opportunity to have depth and connection, and to, even if they tell you shit you don't like, there's so much opportunity for a deeper, closer relationship with that person. If you think about your best friends, they're probably people you went through shit with, that shit about. That is the first level. And again, one of the biggest things in my journey, I literally have an entire free program about this called like Becoming Savage. And the main premise of it is sheer unadulterated honesty with yourself and working towards being unapologetically, authentically you, like, again, a lot of people, they worry about liking, I want people to like me. I want to like myself. Sometimes it just starts with acceptance. Like, you don't have to like you to start with, but you have to be honest about who you are. You have to be honest about the good, the bad, the ugly. And when you truly honestly see all that and see what you like, what you don't like, what you feel shame for, what you feel embarrassed about, you have so much power and information to guide you into eventually having a good relationship with that person, i.e. you. But it all starts with a lot of honesty, and there's a lot of room for you to do that alone. There can be certain parts of honesty that become difficult to have with yourself because, again, let's go into that protection mechanism. We tell ourselves a lot of lies to keep ourselves safe. Yeah. Right? That, the atypical relationship, like, they'll change or they'll commit eventually or whatever, on some level, that shit's bullshit. But if you admit that, then you have to let them go, and you don't want to. So it's easier to keep telling yourself the same lie because that feels less painful, So one is the honesty and the options and opportunity that comes in that. Two is learning about the idea of like the inner child and learning to speak to yourself like you are a child. Because to be honest, like that voice in your head, your subconscious voices, your ego is best likened to a toddler. It's often not going to respond that well to being yelled at, to being bullied, you go head to head. It's just going to come head to head harder. It needs to be met with, let's use I think you said something about chocolate before. Maybe I said something about chocolate, but I'm going to use that example, right? It's like, okay, I'm stressed and I want to eat chocolate and I want to go, fuck you, Nadia. No, you know better than this. You're being a phony. Don't eat chocolate. It's bad for you. I'm still going to eat the chocolate, right? Whereas if I go, okay, I want chocolate. Why do I want chocolate? Because I tend to emotionally eat, and chocolate makes me feel like a hug. And right now I'm feeling like a hug. And I get that. You've had a hard day. You had a fight with your boyfriend. You're allowed to be sad. And I get that you want chocolate. Like, that's fair enough. Now that I've accepted and I've understood and I've given myself some empathy and understanding, that can potentially create enough room for me to make another choice. That potentially leaves enough room for me to regulate and calm, and maybe I do eat the chocolate, maybe I don't, but you start to create a relationship where you're understanding and being empathetic about yourself. It doesn't mean you just accept the behavior and you go, you know what, sis, eat the chocolate. Like, all good. You had a hard day, But you still get it, right? You go, I get it. I get that you want the chocolate. And if you eat it, I might still say, I'm disappointed. Like, I'm disappointed you weren't able to do it, but I'm not going to, I don't hate you for it.
You open up some dialogue. You open up the dialogue at least. Yeah. And you don't just blindly accept whatever condition or emotional reaction gets thrown at you. You actually open dialogue to go, well, look, I understand you want to do that, but do you have to?
And not only do you open the dialogue, but you open the dialogue with acceptance and love before you try to change it, before you try to explain it away, before I think too many people, you will not hate your way out of a problem. It doesn't mean you can't be firm and have high standards, right? Like, so for example, I might say both of these things in the same sentence. I understand why you want to do that, and that's so fair enough. but fucking do better. Right? That might all happen in this. That's
Sort your
generally
shit
my
out.
internal dialogue. Yeah. Right. But I still showed, you know, and I think that's ideally, that's how, if you have kids or you want to have kids, maybe don't swear at them, but you want to have that, like, I love you no matter what. And I understand the decisions that you make, good and bad, no matter what, but I still want for you to be better, you know, like that's the kind of relationship you're trying to cultivate with yourself. Yeah. I believe in you. I know, and I want you to have more, but it's human and it's okay that you have these urges. I don't think you're less because of it, but I might be more proud of you if you don't.
Yep. So we got honesty, understanding the inner child. Give me one more.
The other one is along the lines of both of these things, but in modern day society, is like create the space to get to know yourself. Again, another, I guess I use this analogy with clients. I say, if you had a friend that you hung out with 24 hours a day, but you never spoke, what kind of relationship would you have?
Probably not a great one.
Right? It would be like, cool, I see you every day, every second of the day, but it's quite shallow. I don't really know that much about you. That's the relationship most people have with themselves because they're doing all the time. I go from work to Pilates to seeing my friend to being on my phone to having dinner to talking to watching TV to getting into bed. Where have you spent any time with yourself? Where have you had a conversation? Where have you gotten to know you? So having the white space in your calendar and the habits that enable you to start conversation with you, whether that's driving in silence, walking in silence, meditation, journaling, self-reflection exercises, blocking out 2 hours of white space, whatever it is, but like creating time and space where you are not doing anything other than exploring and conversating with yourself so that you have time to have those understanding conversations. So you have time to actually realize what you need, what the truth and the lies are that you're telling yourself, you know?
Yeah, I love that. I think just on those three in particular, the first two, the first and the third one, the honesty and the time for conversation with yourself. I spent a lot of time over the last couple of years journaling every day. And in that journaling practice, I was able to kind of foster one, an honesty with myself, and two, that time to actually talk to myself. Because I was like, I wasn't sure who I was. I was like, there's this idea of who I am, and then there was like the actions of and where my life actually was, and I was like, well, they seem very far apart. Let me figure out who the fuck I am. And the only way I could do that was by talking with myself through journaling. So I think they're great recommendations, and that's beautiful. So I wanna move on now. I've got a couple questions more, and then I'll let you get off. But actually, this is just a comment. This isn't a question. But the Becoming Savage content and like rollout of that was like hectic. And although I didn't necessarily take part in the process yet, I as someone who like really like consumes a lot of that kind of content, not that kind of content, but a lot of content, and also I try to make some stuff like that myself. I know how much work would have gone into that, and for that to be a free product, like that's insane. Like the booklet itself, and then all the audio recordings. Can people still get access to that, by the way, or is that just off the? They can.
Yeah. So thank you so much. I appreciate that. But yeah, it's available, like permanently available. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll make sure that is linked in show notes. And I'm going to highly, highly recommend that anyone who's even interested in anything that we've talked about in this conversation to go check it the fuck out, because it is. Like it's insane. I'm scrolling through the booklet. I'm like, all right, surely this will end any minute now. And I just keep scrolling and I keep scrolling and I keep scrolling. And I'm like, wow, there is just so much in here. This is, it's just action packed. It's really good.
Thank you. So, I really appreciate that.
That's just a compliment. A couple more questions. So you've been working with a few people that I've kind of become friends with recently. A couple of professional fighters, Samuel Marles and Kakembo. First of all, how did those kind of relationships come about? Like, these guys are professional fighters. They got UFC aspirations. They're very good at what they do, and just amazing guys as well. How did those kinds of relationships develop, and what's it like?
Yeah, so I have always had a lot of like intersect with the fitness industry. Like, even when I came into the space, like my previous branding was called Mind and Core, and it was this play on like, the fitness of the mind starts at its core, like mind, physical body, core, right? Because I always had this idea
Heaps of abs.
Yeah, I always had this idea that, physical health is something we barely understood really 30 years ago. And now everyone trains, right? So in my lifetime, exercise and improving your physical health has gone from here to here. And I had this vision of piggybacking off that to get mental health to have that same sort of idea where we're not waiting to get sick to take action. We exercise every day mentally the same way we exercise physically. And I also, for some reason, have a thing for men that own gyms, because all of my ex-partners have been in the fitness industry and my current partner's in the fitness industry. So I always had this intersect with the fitness industry, and I had a lot of relationships there. So I go into a lot of gyms and I do breath work, or I talk about the mental health stuff within gym spaces. And Sam actually has a relationship with the guys down at Empower Club Official in Melbourne. And I went down there and I facilitated at a men's event, because I work predominantly with men. I do work with women as well, but like men is my, becoming my specialty. And Sam and I co-spoke at this event, and he was talking about the fact that he was looking to talk to someone, and I just set it out there. I was like, hey, like, if you want to try something different, come down and, give me a go. And if you don't like it, go back and see a traditional psych, but maybe you'll enjoy it. And he was really happy. And from his conversations with people, Sam also came on board. And I sort of have over the years worked with footy players, a couple of professional golfers, now like some fighters. So and I think also one of the reasons why, though initially I sort of said to myself, oh, well, I've never played sport, so surely there's got to be, I never really played sport. I haven't. So did a bit of boxing here and there, went to the gym, but I've never been a sport girl. So surely there's someone better placed to do this than I am. But there seems to be a little bit of a gap in the market in terms of people finding people they really like in that space. And I have had partners that were professional athletes and partners that have boxed, and I think the exposure to them on a very, very like close and intimate level, and understanding the psychology and the background and the effects of, I had a partner who was nearly a professional footballer, nearly a professional cricket player, missed out on both, like the experience that created for him. I just learned a lot from him. And then also the other thing is like performance is performance. I guess my, I have an eye for how things tick and what's missing, and I have a real ability to ask questions that I guess other people aren't always asking. So I think just the combination of all my skills, that ability to like sort of speak to men and stuff has sort of allowed that space to sort of accumulate. And what has it been like? Honestly, I love it, because athletes are so dedicated and so disciplined, and they're just my favorite people to work with, because we're not working down here, we're working on the 1%ers up here, and just generally they do it. You tell them to do something, they do it. There's not a lot of having to get the buy-in, like they will try it. And especially once you've built a relationship of trust with them, they're so on board with trying what you want to do, and it's just really amazing getting to see the lengths to which they push themselves, how disciplined, how efficient, how productive, how good their relationships can get, how much the off the field affects the on the field stuff. It's really, I really, really love it. I would love to work with more athletes, but can be like a tricky spot to sort of, a lot of people that are coming up, they don't actually have a lot of money, like athletes that are trying to become athletes don't actually have a lot of money to invest, So I'm definitely still trying to navigate that field and figure out how to be the most effective. But I've really, really loved working with both Sam and Sam. They're very, Sam and Sam, two S's, both very impressive, disciplined men. I look forward to seeing what they do.
Yeah. Well, I had Sam on the podcast last week, and he spoke very glowingly about his relationship with you and everything that you've been able to do for him over the last 12 months and attributes, you know, a lot of his mental gains, or pretty much, yeah, not all of them, but a lot of his mental gains in the last 12 months, especially last year being a pretty tricky year for him, to you and the work that you guys have done. So that's excellent. And they both got wins over the last week, which is very cool and exciting.
Yeah.
Go team. Let's go.
Yeah, it's very exciting. It's nice to hear about Sam as well. That always makes my day.
Yeah. Do you watch UFC at all? Are you into fighting?
So, yeah, I guess, again, there's an ex-boyfriend that I should thank for a lot of things because, yes, he was really into it. I actually used to think fighting was horrendous. I was like, oh, this is barbaric, bloody, no, you know, this is so wrong.
Disgusting.
And he was, and he loved it. And he got really into it and he spoke to me about it, started watching it with him, and I just got really, really, really into it. I think I fell in love with Jorge Masvidal at the start, actually. He was the first person that, like, randomly pulled me in, and then just sort of like, and then he did a lot of BJJ and stuff back then as well. And yeah, just really my appreciation and understanding of it really developed. And I also boxed for about, like, through COVID, boxing was a big thing that helped me. And my boxing trainer was an ex-professional kickboxer, and I've just come to realize that, especially martial arts, the mental health that goes, like, they don't, even without having ever spoken to a mental health professional, the mentality that a lot of fighting martial arts style people carry is very, very impressive on its own. You know, they really, their ethos and what they learn just within the sport itself is so aligned to how I operate as a coach. So I think I just became attracted to those sort of people and that mentality and that desire of excellence that a lot of them hold, and the grit and the discipline and all those things. And I guess I've just been lucky enough that has eventuated, because they're definitely like my people, you know, though I'm not a fighter. I feel like fighters are very much, you know, the becoming savage, all of that imagery and all of it is. It's because, honestly, if you are going to get through the mental health journey, if you're going to go from surviving to thriving, you are a fucking UFC fighter, because that is what it is like. It is savage. It is brutal. You will bleed. You will cry. You will do all the things, and you will only get to this side if you can be brutal. It's not butterflies and rainbows and crystals and namaste, you know, it's just not. So
you got to get dirty. You got to seek discomfort.
Yeah, it's going to seek you.
Yep, 100%. Nadia, what's your 10-year vision look like, and then we'll sign it off for the Nadia Sophia coaching and performance coaching kind of business. What do you want it to look like? What do you want this community to look like?
Yeah, so I guess my 10-year dream professionally is, like, I always joke about being the female Tony Robbins, you know, very different methodology, but the more people that know who I am and know what I do, the more people I can help. So I really hope to one day be as well known a household name as one can become in this space. And really, I have a community called The Revolution, and I see that becoming like a website, a real online portal for people, same as how I said I'm the Swiss Army knife. This is the Swiss Army knife of programs. It's got physical health, mental health, finance, relationships, everything that you could need, a little bit of all of it, so that you can go in, you can actually learn how to integrate information, get all those pieces, find the specialist you need, and take the next step. So I see that website becoming, that community becoming like a you know, hopefully an Australia-wide thing or a global-wide thing that's allowing me to support people, because it's really cheap. It's $99 a month. And for me, that's been really important. I can't change the world if I'm only charging up here, you know? So having that accessible to anyone and everyone. And then also working with a couple of elite athletes, a couple of elite business people, just a very small amount of one-on-ones where I'm doing sort of that, really I'm in their lives. I'm their Wendy Rhodes if you've watched Billions, you know, and we're in there and we're like, I'm with them at the fights and we're doing all those amazing things. And I also hope to have a family and kids and to be leading, you know, raising the next generations of leaders and becoming a real, you know, the community is called The Revolution, like being a revolutionary and teaching people to look at their well-being and their mental health in just like a completely different way, and turning that critical thinking, that discernment and all of those tools into something mainstream, which right now will require a revolution, because it's so on the fringe, you know? And that's my dream. And then all the normal stuff. Like I'd love to go on holidays and like, you know, have a nice beach house and all that stuff as well, you know? I'd like to change the world and have a beach house. That's it, you know?
Not asking for much. Nah, I love
I
that.
don't think so.
I love that. I love that. I love that. I love that. Well, Nadia, I want to say thank you for your vulnerability today, for your information, your insights, and your time. I've really appreciated talking to you. And yeah, I'm going to send everyone your way via the information in the show notes. But yeah, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed the conversation. It was nice to connect. And yeah, I hope that if there's something that people gain from here, any questions, please reach out. And I can't change the world alone. So you all got to get on board and give me a hand.
Let's do it. That's it for the podcast, guys. I hope you enjoyed this chat. If you did, please let me know. Drop a comment below. If you can review this on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, that would mean the world. Please definitely go check out Nadia's stuff. All her content is amazing. And again, that product, Becoming Savage, is phenomenal. If you want to reach out to her or contact her, her details will be in the show notes. So yeah, that's it for me. I'll catch you next week on The Sav Show. Thanks for tuning in. Let's go.